On February 16, 2005, a purple 1.44 megabyte Memorex floppy disk arrived at the KOS television station in Wichita, Kansas. The sender tucked this piece of archaic technology inside a padded envelope. This anonymous figure had communicated with detectives in recent weeks, inquiring if a floppy disk could be traced back to a specific computer, demanding law enforcement be honest. Desperate to catch a ghost who had haunted their city for 3 decades, investigators placed a classified ad in the local newspaper. The text read, "Rex, it will be okay." Detectives offered a false assurance that his digital footprint would remain hidden in the shadows. The sender took the bait. He mailed the disk, operating under the absolute belief that he was locked in a gentleman's agreement with law enforcement. Police cyber investigators ran the disk through forensic software to recover deleted files within minutes. Forensic examiner Randy Stone recovered a deleted Microsoft Word document. The file contained an agenda for a church council meeting. The internal metadata listed the name Dennis as the last person to save the file. The same hidden data listed Christ Lutheran Church as the registered organization on the software license. This single act of technological naivety was about to unravel a 31-year-old mystery and unmask a monster hiding in plain sight. In early 1974, Wichita, Kansas, wore the proud title of the air capital of the world. The sprawling city sat flat against the endless Midwestern prairie, anchored by massive aviation manufacturing plants that provided steady paychecks and a sense of enduring stability. Heavy industrial complexes of steel and concrete gave way to quiet suburban grids lined with modest mid-century homes. Tall elm trees cast long shadows over manicured lawns, and sodium streetlights flickered to life each evening, casting a warm orange glow across the pavement. Residents moved through their daily lives with an absolute sense of security. Families left their front doors unlocked without a second thought. Bicycles lay abandoned on front lawns until morning without fear of theft. Children played neighborhood games of tag until the sun dipped below the horizon. The community operated on an unspoken contract of mutual trust and shared values. Neighbors knew each other by name, exchanging pleasantries across low chain link fences while tending to their gardens. The heavy metallic click of a deadbolt was an unfamiliar sound in these peaceful corridors. No one anticipated that a predator was studying these quiet streets. The innocence of this thriving city stood on the precipice of a devastating shift. The Otero family embodied this wholesome Midwestern dream. Joseph Otero, a retired United States Air Force mechanic, provided a strong, disciplined foundation for his household. He spent his days working hard to secure a comfortable future for his loved ones, operating with military precision and a quiet, steadfast dedication. His wife Julie poured her energy into raising their children, maintaining a warm, welcoming home filled with laughter and routine. They lived in a single-story corner house bordered by thick winter bare bushes that shielded the side windows from the street. A small front porch faced the quiet road while a detached garage sat at the end of a short concrete driveway. Inside, the house hummed with the chaotic, joyful energy of a large family navigating the demands of school and work. The parents nurtured their children with an eye toward education and civic responsibility, fostering hopes of college degrees and bright futures. Joseph and Julie taught their kids to respect their neighbors and look out for one another. The family kept a predictable schedule, rising with the sun each morning to prepare for the day ahead. Their lives mirrored the thousands of other families tucked into the quiet pockets of Wichita. They were ordinary people building a legacy of love and hard work. On the freezing morning of January 15, 1974, a bitter frost clung to the lawns of the Otero neighborhood. The household awoke to the familiar sounds of a busy morning routine. Coffee brewed in the kitchen while the children gathered their books and packed their lunches. The older Otero children bundled themselves into heavy winter coats, wrapping scarves around their necks to fight the biting Kansas wind. They stepped out onto the small front porch, pulling the wooden door shut behind them. The children crunched through the fresh snow, walking shoulder to shoulder, down the icy sidewalk toward their school. They left behind a home radiating warmth and safety. Joseph and Julie remained inside with the two younger children, preparing to face the day. Unknown to the entire family, a meticulous stalker had mapped these exact movements. This shadowy figure waited in the freezing dawn, watching the older children disappear around the corner. He noted the precise layout of the property, the distance from the street to the front door, and the vulnerable points of entry. The moment the street fell silent, the intruder moved toward the house. The era of unlocked doors in Wichita was about to vanish forever, replaced by an enduring suffocating paranoia. The nightmare began on the afternoon of January 15, 1974. The older Otero children trogged back through the snow, returning from a long day of classes. They walked up the concrete driveway, expecting to hear the familiar sounds of their mother moving through the kitchen or the television playing in the living room. Instead, a heavy, unnatural silence hung over the property. One of the children reached for the front doorknob, turning the brass handle, only to find it locked tight. This small anomaly sent a chill down their spines, as their parents never locked the doors during the day. The children circled the perimeter of the house, peering through the cold glass of the side windows. Panic set in as they realized the family dog was outside pacing in the backyard, separated from the warmth of the house. Desperate for answers, they forced their way inside through a side entrance. The air inside the home felt stagnant and oppressive. Moving through the quiet hallways, they walked into a scene of unimaginable devastation. They found the lifeless bodies of their parents and their two younger siblings. The family had met a brutal, permanent end at the hands of a home invasion predator. The frantic, older children fled the house, running into the freezing street to flag down neighbors and call for help. Veteran Wichita detectives descended on the property, sealing off the corner lot with yellow tape. Investigators stepped through the home, documenting a scene that defied all logic and precedent in their quiet city. The assailant had executed the attack with chilling mechanical precision. The telephone wires on the outside of the house were cut clean through, isolating the family from the outside world. The perpetrator used specific complex knots to bind the victims, showcasing a level of premeditation that shook the seasoned officers to their core. Law enforcement officers canvassed the neighborhood, knocking on doors beneath the glowing street lamps and searching for footprints in the hardening snow. They brought in tracking dogs and scoured the nearby fields, hunting for any trace of the phantom who orchestrated this tragedy. The search yielded nothing but empty space and dead ends. The sheer calculated nature of the crime scene indicated the attacker was not a common burglar, but a predator who hunted for sport. Weeks turned into months, and the trail went cold. The citizens of Wichita rushed to hardware stores, stripping the shelves of deadbolts, window locks, and security alarms. 9 agonizing months passed with zero answers until a crisp autumn day in October 1974. A patron browsing the aisles of the Wichita Public Library pulled a mechanical engineering textbook from a quiet, dusty shelf. Inside the pages, the patron discovered a folded letter hidden away from public view. The document proved to be a detailed manifesto penned by an unknown author. Law enforcement seized the letter, subjecting the paper to rigorous forensic analysis. The writer claimed full responsibility for the tragedy at the Otero household. To prove his authenticity, the author outlined specific unreleased crime scene details that only the true perpetrator could possess. He detailed the specific knots used to silence the family and the exact layout of the victims in the rooms. He taunted the police, mocking their inability to catch him and outlining his grim methods of operation. The author concluded this terrifying communication by christening himself with an acronym that would cast a dark shadow over Kansas for a generation: He chose 3 letters representing his horrific sequence of actions. The letters BTK became synonymous with pure terror. This bold communication marked the start of a decades-long psychological war between law enforcement and a phantom. Early 1974 brought an icy dread to the citizens of Wichita. Following the Otero tragedy, residents abandoned their trusting ways, installing heavy deadbolts and leaving their porch lights burning until dawn. On April 4, 1974, the phantom struck a small duplex on East 13th Street, sitting just 2 miles east of the bustling city center. 21-year-old Catherine Bright returned to her modest home, unaware that an intruder waited in the shadows of her own bedroom. The assailant forced his way into her life and stole her future. During this era of escalating terror, the true perpetrator vanished into the fabric of the community. He secured employment as a trusted installation technician for a prominent home security company. Citizens, terrified by the news reports, paid this exact company to install residential alarm systems to protect their families. The predator wore a neat corporate uniform and drove a marked company van, granting him unquestioned access to the most intimate spaces of his victims' homes. This revealed a catastrophic systemic vulnerability within corporate hiring practices of the 1970s. Companies conducted zero psychological screenings and relied on superficial background checks, allowing a predator to hold the master keys to the city. He spent his days learning the exact blind spots of residential security systems, using his professional knowledge to map out future attacks. The community paid the monster to build their fortresses, oblivious to the reality of the situation. Law enforcement possessed no mechanisms to track utility workers, leaving a massive gap in their suspect profiling. The attacks continued their agonizing progression, striking Shirley Vian in March 1977 and Nancy Fox in December of that same year. Nancy Fox lived in a single-story brick apartment complex on South Pershing Street, arranged around a small, quiet central courtyard. The perpetrator severed the external telephone wires of her building before entering, utilizing the exact same methodical preparation seen at previous scenes. Following these cradities, the assailant initiated a relentless campaign of psychological warfare against the local authorities. He mailed cryptic letters, twisted poetry, and mocking diagrams directly to the Wichita Police Department and local media outlets. In response, the police chief formed a specialized task force of veteran detectives operating out of a cramped windowless basement office at City Hall. This elite group earned the informal title of the Ghostbusters, dedicating every waking hour to hunting the Phantom. The detectives operated in an analog world, surrounded by towering metal filing cabinets and hundreds of thousands of handwritten index cards. Investigators spent their days manually cross-referencing fingerprints using rudimentary magnifying glasses, straining their eyes against the harsh fluorescent lights. Without the aid of computerized databases, the flow of information moved at a glacial pace. Tips arrived via physical mail or landline calls, requiring officers to drive across the county to verify a single alibi. The sheer volume of paperwork overwhelmed the fragile administrative system, causing crucial details to vanish into crowded folders. The task force poured their souls into the pursuit, yet they repeatedly found themselves staring at empty walls. On September 16, 1986, 28-year-old Vicki Wetterell met a grim fate inside her residence on West 13th Street. Her house sat back from the road, featuring a long paved driveway and dense shrubbery that provided natural cover from passing vehicles. Her husband, Bill Weigerel, returned home for his lunch break and walked into a scene of absolute devastation. Wichita detectives arrived at the property and focused their intense scrutiny on the grieving husband. Law enforcement protocols of the era dictated a rigid, unwavering focus on the spouse in all domestic tragedies. Investigators brought Bill into an interrogation room, pressing him for a confession and seizing his personal property for testing. Forensic technicians collected hair samples from his scalp and scrutinized his daily movements, casting a dark cloud of suspicion over his life. This dogmatic adherence to standard procedural manuals created a monumental blind spot in the investigation. Detectives refused to consider that a random predator had bypassed the front door in broad daylight. The true culprit walked away without a single glance from the authorities, shielded by the department's tunnel vision. Bill Wetterl spent the next 18 years living under the heavy weight of false accusations shunned by segments of his own community. The actual perpetrator continued to live a normal life just a few miles away, serving on his local church council. This devastating investigative failure gifted the Phantom nearly 2 decades of uninterrupted freedom. The terror reached a sudden halt following the January 1991 attack on 62-year-old Doris Davis. Her secluded home sat on North Hillside Street, surrounded by barren winter trees and positioned at the end of a long, unpaved gravel road. The predator removed her from this quiet sanctuary and left her out in the freezing rural landscape. Following this final tragedy, a profound silence descended upon the city. The mocking letters ceased arriving at the television stations, and the mysterious phone calls to the dispatch center stopped. The task force members sat in their 5th-floor headquarters, staring at corkboards covered in yellowing crime scene photographs. Investigators exhausted every remaining lead, driving down rural highways to interview aging persons of interest. In the late 1990s, advancements in forensic technology allowed technicians to test biological evidence gathered from the Wegerle residence. The laboratory results definitively cleared Bill Wegerle, proving his absolute innocence to the world. However, when analysts uploaded the unknown profile into the National Tracking System, the computer returned 0 matches. The federal database only indexed individuals with prior felony convictions, leaving ordinary law-abiding citizens unchecked. Because the predator maintained a flawless public facade and possessed no criminal record, he remained invisible to the world's most advanced scientific tools. The citizens of Wichita convinced themselves that the monster had died, moved away, or found himself locked in a distant prison. In March 2004, the Wichita Eagle newspaper published a comprehensive retrospective article commemorating the 30th anniversary of the Otero tragedy. The printed pages sat on driveways and front porches across the city, carrying headlines that questioned the fate of the elusive Phantom. Journalists and retired detectives told the public that the killer was dead, locked away in an asylum, or too old to function. This perceived public insult fractured the fragile, narcissistic ego of the dormant predator. He refused to accept a legacy of irrelevance and felt an overwhelming compulsion to prove his continued existence. On March 17, 2004, a local resident checked his curbside mailbox on a quiet residential street. He pulled a thick manila envelope from the metal box, noticing a strange return address printed in block letters. The package contained a carefully typed letter addressed directly to the newspaper editors. Inside the envelope, the sender included a crisp, clear photocopy of Vicky Witerl's missing driver's license. He also provided several photographs of the 1986 crime scene, captured from angles accessible only to the perpetrator. The Phantom had returned to the public stage, shattering 13 years of uneasy silence. Law enforcement mobilized, realizing the aging predator remained highly organized and desperate for widespread recognition. The cold case transformed into an active, high-stakes hunt for a man hiding in plain sight. Lieutenant Ken Landwehr reactivated the specialized task force, securing a confidential command center on the top floor of the police department. The returning predator launched a bizarre, convoluted campaign of communication, dropping cryptic packages in public parks and random street corners. Officers recovered an empty cereal box, altered with disturbing images, and a package containing jewelry taken from victims decades prior. Recognizing the physical reality of these drop points, law enforcement initiated an unprecedented biological dragnet across the county. Officers fanned out into neighborhoods and local businesses, systematically swabbing the inner cheeks of over 4,000 local men. Couriers transported these thousands of cotton swabs to the Kansas Bureau of Investigation Laboratory for rigorous testing. Detectives endured a slow, agonizing wait for the scientific results, hoping one of the random samples would trigger an alarm in the system. Week after week, the laboratory technicians reported 0 matches, amplifying the frustration within the command center. The strategy exposed yet another fundamental limitation in modern forensic applications. A voluntary swab sweep relied on the true perpetrator willingly submitting his own biological material. The predator simply ignored the sweeping requests, continuing his daily routine as a respected municipal compliance officer. He hid behind his uniform and his clipboard, writing citations for overgrown grass while law enforcement searched blind for a ghost. Faced with mounting dead ends, the detectives pivoted their strategy to exploit a severe psychological vulnerability within their target. Lieutenant Landwehr recognized that the predator possessed an overwhelming desire to be seen as an intellectual superior. The task force decided to feed this massive ego, directing the investigative team to communicate through the classified section of the local newspaper. They purchased small ad spaces, printing brief, coded messages that politely acknowledged the receipt of his hidden packages. The predator engaged with these public signals, leaving intricate word puzzles and demanding clear answers from the police chief. He directed patrol officers to a package concealed at a massive Home Depot hardware store on Woodlawn Boulevard. The immense physical distance between the bustling store entrance and the hidden package illustrated his absolute brazen confidence. He operated in broad daylight, surrounded by hundreds of shoppers, feeling invincible against the local authorities. Detectives constructed a submissive persona in their newspaper replies, playing the role of an obedient student seeking guidance from a master. They asked clarifying questions about his cryptic letters, feeding his belief that he controlled the narrative. This calculated psychological trap laid the essential groundwork for a fatal error. The investigators prepared to leverage his arrogance against his profound ignorance of modern digital technology. The psychological chess match reached an absolute peak in early February 2005. The predator sent a communication to the Wichita Police Department with a distinct technical inquiry. He asked if he could communicate using a floppy disk without leaving a digital trail back to his personal computer. Lieutenant Ken Landwehr recognized the monumental opportunity presented by this technological ignorance. The task force commander authorized a response in the classified section of the Wichita Eagle newspaper. The printed text contained a direct message reading, "Rex, it will be okay." The perpetrator trusted this false assurance from the authorities. He procured a purple 1.44 megabyte Memorex brand floppy disk and loaded his communications onto the magnetic storage medium. He placed the plastic square into a padded manila envelope and mailed it across the city. The package traveled through the postal system and arrived at the KSS Television Broadcast Studios on Northwest Street. The television station operated out of a single-story commercial building surrounded by vast asphalt parking lots in a busy commercial district. Employees stationed at the front reception desk sorted through the Daily Mail deliveries. Station workers opened the envelope, recognized the terrifying signature marks on the letter, and contacted law enforcement. Detectives arrived at the studios, seized the evidence, and transported the disk to the Cyber Investigations Laboratory at police headquarters. On February 16, 2005, Detective Randy Stone sat in the windowless computer forensics laboratory. The room hummed with the sound of cooling fans from towering server racks and workstation towers. Stone inserted the purple Memorex disk into a sterile external disk drive connected to his forensic computer. He utilized specialized data recovery software to bypass the visible surface files and scan the deep magnetic sectors of the disk. The EnCase forensic program utilized raw data processing to extract remnants of overwritten sectors. The program searched the unallocated space for fragments of deleted information. The digital scan produced a profound breakthrough within minutes of execution. The software recovered a deleted Microsoft Word document buried in the digital architecture. Stone opened the recovered file and stared at an agenda for a local church council meeting. He directed his attention to the hidden metadata embedded within the file structure. The Digital Properties menu revealed a user profile bearing the name Dennis as the last individual to save the document. The exact same metadata listed Christ Lutheran Church as the registered organization tied to the software license. This simple string of digital text obliterated 3 decades of impenetrable mystery in a matter of seconds. The predator failed to comprehend that deleting a file only removes the operating pathway, leaving the raw data intact on the physical disk. The investigation shifted from the digital realm to the physical streets of the city. Detectives opened an internet browser and navigated to the official website for Christ Lutheran Church. The brick religious structure stood at the intersection of North Seneca Street and West 53rd Street, featuring a tall white cross and a sprawling paved parking area. The investigators scanned the online staff directory and the list of congregation leaders. They found the name Dennis Rader listed as the current president of the church council. The home address for Rader sat a few miles north in the quiet suburban municipality of Park City. Detectives initiated a secret surveillance operation, driving unmarked vehicles down Independence Court to map the physical geography of the suspect's residence. They observed a modest single-story house with light siding, a sloping roof, and an attached garage. A black Jeep Cherokee sat parked in the concrete driveway. This exact make and model matched a vehicle captured on security cameras, dropping a mysterious package into a Home Depot parking lot bin in previous weeks. The surveillance teams utilized telephoto lenses to document the movements of the suspect. Officers maintained a safe distance to avoid detection, parking in adjacent neighborhoods and watching through heavy binoculars. Rader worked as a municipal compliance officer for Park City, driving a marked white truck to enforce neighborhood codes. The man who terrorized a generation spent his days citing neighbors for tall grass and unleashed dogs. Law enforcement possessed circumstantial evidence but required absolute biological confirmation before executing an arrest warrant. A direct request for a cheek swab would alert the suspect and trigger the destruction of trophies hidden inside his home. The task force devised a strategy to obtain familial DNA without tipping their hand. Detectives discovered that Rader had a daughter named Carreri, who attended Kansas State University in the city of Manhattan, Kansas. Manhattan sat over 100 miles northeast of Wichita, situated in the rolling Flint Hills region. In previous years, the daughter submitted to a routine medical examination, including a pap smear at the University Student Health Clinic. Investigators obtained a federal subpoena for this archived biological sample held in the clinic medical storage facility. Forensic technicians extracted the genetic profile from the preserved cellular material. Analysts at the Kansas Bureau of Investigation Laboratory compared the daughter's genetic markers against the unknown biological profile recovered from the 1986 Wedderell tragedy. The computer systems aligned the complex molecular structures and returned a definitive familial match. The laboratory process required precise handling to preserve the fragile chain of custody. The confirmation elevated the investigation from a circumstantial hunch to a scientific certainty. The science proved that the respected church council president and municipal code enforcer was the exact phantom who stole 10 lives. The long hunt for the ghost of Wichita reached a definitive end on February 25, 2005. The authorities orchestrated a massive synchronized operation to apprehend the predator. The plan required precision to prevent a hostage situation or the destruction of critical evidence. Rader left his Park City municipal office in his marked white compliance truck to return home for his midday lunch break. He drove down the familiar suburban streets, approaching the intersection of turbulent apprehension. A coordinated fleet of unmarked law enforcement vehicles converged on his position, surrounding his truck blocks from his front door. Officers blocked all escape routes with heavy tactical vehicles. Armed officers stepped onto the pavement and ordered him to exit the vehicle. Rader offered zero resistance, stepping out of the cab and placing his hands behind his back. The metal handcuffs clicked, shut around his wrists, ending 31 years of uninterrupted freedom. The suspect wore a beige jacket and a collared shirt, looking like an ordinary municipal employee rather than a monstrous predator. Law enforcement transported him to the Wichita Police Department headquarters in the heart of downtown. Simultaneous raid teams breached the front door of his Park City residence, executing a comprehensive search warrant. Technicians scoured the property, discovering hidden caches of Polaroid photographs, chilling trophies taken from the scenes, and journals documenting his horrific actions. The physical evidence found inside the walls of the Mostest home cemented his undeniable guilt. Inside the sterile interrogation room, Detective Ken Landwehr initiated a marathon questioning session that spanned 34 hours. Rader sat across the metal table, appearing bewildered by his capture and devoid of remorse for his actions. The suspect looked the veteran detective in the eyes and asked a single defining question. Rader demanded to know why the police lied to him about the traceability of the floppy disk in the newspaper advertisement. The predator held an absolute belief that he shared a bond of mutual respect and honor with the investigators. He failed to comprehend the reality of his predicament, viewing the deception as a breach of professional etiquette. Confronted with the overwhelming weight of the digital and biological evidence, his narcissistic facade crumbled. Rader waived his legal rights and began detailing the intricacies of all 10 tragedies. Landwehr maintained a calm professional demeanor, refusing to offer the suspect any emotional reaction. Rader requested a glass of water and proceeded to draw detailed diagrams of the crime scenes on a legal pad. He displayed absolute emotional detachment, treating the session like a corporate debriefing rather than a confession of monumental destruction. He cataloged his preparations, his stalking methods, and his specific psychological tactics with absolute clarity. The sheer volume of specific, unreleased facts pouring from his mouth validated the decades of investigative frustration. The interrogator sat in stunned silence, documenting the inner workings of a monster who compartmentalized his existence with absolute perfection. In June 2005, the Sedgwick County Courthouse became the focal point of global attention. The imposing limestone structure dominated the downtown Wichita skyline, filled with grieving families, national journalists, and heavy security details. Bailiffs stood at absolute attention along the perimeter of the room. The wooden benches creaked under the weight of a traumatized community seeking closure. Rader stood before a packed courtroom and waived his right to a jury trial. He pleaded guilty to 10 counts of first-degree premeditated offenses, securing his fate in the criminal justice system. The judge required the defendant to allocate his crimes, demanding a factual recitation of his actions on the public record. Rader stood at the wooden defense podium, wearing a dark suit and a pair of reading glasses. He spoke for hours, utilizing clinical, sterile terminology to describe the end of 10 innocent lives. He referred to his preparations as projects and his horrific acts as hits, stripping the victims of their humanity. Rader recounted the knots he used and the timeline of his intrusions with the enthusiasm of a hobbyist displaying a collection. The rigid legal protocols forced the families to endure this final psychological assault in silence. The sound of stifled sobs echoed from the gallery as the families listened to the mundane tone of his voice. He offered zero apologies and displayed zero empathy for the catastrophic pain he inflicted upon the community. His chilling performance in the courtroom broadcast his absolute lack of a human soul to the entire world. The definitive conclusion to this generational nightmare arrived in August 2005. The presiding judge sentenced Rader to 10 consecutive life terms in the state penitentiary. The complex legal math guaranteed a minimum of 175 years behind bars without the possibility of parole. Department of Corrections transport vans moved the prisoner from the county jail to the El Dorado Correctional Facility. The maximum security prison sits isolated on the eastern edge of the Kansas prairie, surrounded by layers of razor wire and electronic fences. Prison officials placed Rader in absolute solitary confinement, locking him inside a concrete cell for 23 hours a day to prevent attacks from the general population. He exists in a tiny box made of cinder blocks and steel, stripped of his community status and his internet access. The heavy iron doors shut with a final echoing clang. The surviving family members of the victims stood on the courthouse steps, holding photographs of their loved ones in the summer sun. They experienced a profound sense of moral justice, knowing the phantom would never breathe free air again. The community replaced their fear with resilience. Law enforcement agencies study this case as a masterclass in psychological manipulation and the immense power of digital forensics. As of the year 2026, the aging predator remains entombed within the concrete walls of El Dorado. His death